Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today, my guest is Julian Bermudez, a therapist, psychedelic integration specialist, and a guide for those navigating the deeper layers of healing. Through somatic work, meditation, and self inquiry, Julian helps people reconnect with who they truly are beyond trauma, anxiety, and conditioning. His work bridges modern therapeutic tools with timeless human wisdom, all rooted in presence and deep listening. Whether you're processing a psychedelic journey or searching for meaning in all the messiness of life, Julian is someone who helps people come home to themselves. So, Julian, how are you doing today, my friend?
Wonderful, Keegan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's good to have you on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be who you are, and why you chose the road that you walk now?
Sure, sure. Well, I came from a lot of pain. My childhood was fairly traumatic, and I had to adapt to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the ways that I adapted to that pain initially helped me. They might have even saved me in lots of ways, and they became the source of great suffering later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really trying to figure out, how can I transform these patterns? How can I have some agency and choice in life rather than just being in survival? How can I transform that pain and start to enjoy life?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to university, of course, because
Ooh.
that's where always the answers are. That's at least what we're told, right?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't find any answers there. Well,
Mm.
maybe I did. I found some incredible teachers through self-study because I wasn't finding the answers, so I looked for them on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started coming into this field.
Oh.
And I was finding answers to things like trauma, addictions, and rather than it just being a complex mechanism of genetics and choice,
Mm-hmm.
it was an adaptation to pain. It
Mm.
was it was there were things that had happened, and these addictions or this depression or this pain that we were carrying was an adaptation to it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So in other words, we weren't just, helpless victims that were just at the whim of our genes or our disease or whatever's happening in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, I started to see that I had some choice.
Mm.
So I spent, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years really trying to figure out how to cultivate that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you only know one thing,
Mm. Yeah.
it's very difficult to do or learn something outside of that. Kind of like
Mm.
learning how to see a color that you're blind to.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
it took a long time and a lot of practice, but the more and more that I focused on it, the more determined I was, the more persistent I was, and the more I learned to be gentle and compassionate and humorous
Mm-hmm.
and try and find the joy and play with the process, the more things changed.
Huh.
And the more and more that it changed and transformed inside of me,
Uh-huh.
the more and more people came to see me. And that's how I got to where I am now.
Oh man. That is a beautiful journey. But first of all, I gotta say, I'm so sorry about your childhood. No one should ever have to go through that kind of thing. And I'm just glad that you're on the other side of it. And it's even better that you're helping other people do that too, because it's so special. But you said something early, well, not early, like right near the end, that really had me go like, "Ooh, that was good. I haven't heard that one before." And that was the whole trying to see a color that you're blind to. And I mean, that speaks on so many levels because, for instance, like the same could be said about yourself, right? And what others see in you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never met somebody who had a perfect childhood, first of all.
No.
Even when I'm working with somebody who comes and they said, my childhood was fantastic, it was great, everything was wonderful. That's true. And there's usually another side to it. So I think everybody, in some regards or another, is navigating some amount of childhood trauma. And we've all
Mm,
adapted to it in lots of ways. And that's our personality. And so we get deeply entrenched in that belief of, this is just who I am, or this is
mhm.
just how it is.
Yeah.
Um, I see the world a very specific way, and that way is always based off of how my worldview, how my perceptions, how my neurological systems developed, and in
Mhm.
what environment they developed in relationship to.
Mm, yeah.
So when I'm older and I'm only seeing things through this entrenched pattern, it's through the lens of how my childish eyes developed.
Mhm.
And so seeing things outside of that is very challenging and very difficult. We can
Mm.
do it. It can absolutely happen. And I think that's the task for so many of us today, is to carve new patterns
Mm-hmm.
and to take responsibility for the ones that were handed to us and to choose how to create new things outside of that. Very challenging, but I think that's the work that we're all doing right now.
Oh, wow. I love that. And the way that you put that, I don't know if it's just me, but it almost sounds like that is the perfect version of maturing, you know? Because it's growing into a better version and all that. And it's supposed to be shedding off the childhood aspect, but not so much shedding off. It's more of an integration, right? Because that's kind of what you do. So,
Precisely.
have you ever met someone that's really tried to like shed their childhood entirely? Like they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want any beliefs. They don't want even the good stuff. Even if it was a whole bunch, they just go, nah, that wasn't for me because I go this way now. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually very common,
Hmm.
even on a social level. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when there's one structure or system that's in place, and then we start to realize just how dysfunctional, or how much pain it's causing, we want to turn around and cut the head off the snake.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do a revolution, which means we go in a circle and we're facing exactly where we started off, but we haven't learned the lessons from the old system.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at that in a personal level very commonly as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Tool song where he says, "Crucify the ego." And this is a very common phrase, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that this is something that we want to kill, we want to get rid of, we want to exile it, we want to
Mm.
disconnect from it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a part of us.
Yeah.
That's something that we went through. That's a part of us that developed based off of what we were going through.
Mm-hmm.
There's wisdom, there's teachings, there's lessons, there's very strong characteristics that can be very, very useful for us. I'm not saying that we want those parts of us driving the car that we're in, but we definitely want to take the advice that they have on where we're going. And then we as
Oh.
adults want to choose, how do we get there in the most healthy, constructive ways.
Hmm. Okay. So, oh man. So you're almost saying that the child aspects of ourselves or the ego knows what's best for us, like deep down, and it's up to like the adulter part to be like, this is the path we'll get there, but the adult part can't really choose the final destination. Is that
Kind
kind of
of.
how?
Yeah,
Huh.
kind of. The childish part has fundamental needs,
Mm-hmm.
fundamental human needs that we as adults also have.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is when we were going through pain, so for instance, when we were kids and we had these needs and they were
Mm-hmm.
going unmet, and we'll say
Yeah.
that's the pain that we had,
Mm-hmm.
we adapted to it in the ways that were available to us. Maybe we learned to stuff our emotions down, because if we had expressed our emotions, well, we would have gotten something to cry about. Um, we might have learned to sacrifice our boundaries, because having boundaries would have made things more dangerous for us. We might have jeopardized our relationships. We might have learned to become people pleasers in order to maintain our attachments, our relationships. And underneath all of these is the fundamental need for connection, for
Mm-hmm.
attachment, to be seen, to be valued, to be respected, to be cherished exactly as we are, and not have to work and not have to become something that becomes deserving of getting the attachments or the connection.
Mm-hmm.
So the needs of the child are exactly the same as the needs of the adult in lots of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the ways of meeting those needs are usually based off of the adaptation that we developed as children. So we don't
Oh.
want to follow that adaptation anymore. We want to see it. We want to recognize, identify when it's present,
Mm-hmm.
when that is the dominant pathway that we're following. And we want to choose to meet the needs that are underlying it in healthy, constructive ways. So we can use our adult tools, so to speak, to communicate and to navigate this world to meet those exact same needs.
Hmm. Holy crap. The way you just broke that down, I think it just shook my world a little bit. And then you were also going along saying you might have done this or this. And I'm like, yeah, I did all those and then more, I think. And that has really screwed me up in a lot of different ways. And I don't know, the way that you just broke it down just makes me go like, have I been doing something wrong myself? So how do you normally help someone adapt those childlike needs and adult needs and those adult tools all together? Uh, is an adult tool a psychedelic?
It can be. Um, yeah, the first thing we want to do is we want to start to become aware. We want to
Mm-hmm.
build awareness of being able to recognize or identify when these patterns are in place.
Mm-hmm.
So right away, you use the word wrong. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. In other words, there's the judgment, the evaluation. So what we want to do is we want to start to notice when those dynamics are present.
Mm-hmm.
We could ask, was there ever a time in your life or anybody's life who was going through it for that matter, where we were judged and criticized or evaluated? And if we did the right thing, then we got whatever it is, the connection, the attachment, the praise, the value, the
Mm-hmm.
acceptance, the respect, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So then what we want to do is recognize and identify when that judgment, when that evaluation, that criticism, that harshness is still present today. In other words, when the pain from the past is still showing up here.
Mm.
Psychedelics can be a fantastic tool to help us build awareness of those. But the experience of working with the psychedelic is in particular what I'm talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
not the means of getting there.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
we can have that experience in numerous ways, and things like reflection and inquiry are fantastic tools to get to that exact same place.
Oh, okay. Oh boy. So, what do you do whenever someone comes up to you and they might have an idea of where they need to go, but they don't know how to get there?
Hmm. Yeah. My tools as a therapist are to try to really understand what the person's going through.
Mm.
So understanding is the prerequisite for understanding is listening.
Mm.
So I have to very actively listen. And in order to get the information to understand what they're going through, I have to ask very good questions.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
is I meet so many people who come in and they say, I'm going through this thing and
Mm.
I want this thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And very commonly, again, it comes back to I'm trying to find the color that I can't see. So their idea of what they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
it might be genuine, it might be very authentic, and it might not be the exact thing that they're looking for.
Mm.
So by understanding the condition of what they're really going through, of really trying to understand how it developed and what the fundamental needs are underneath it,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they can really figure out where they're trying to go. So
Mm.
by simply trying to figure out how this dynamic, whatever it is that they're going through, has developed, in
Mm-hmm.
what conditions it developed. So we ask, when do you first remember feeling this?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost always goes back to childhood.
Yeah.
Then we ask, well, what were the needs that you had that went unmet? What did you need when this thing was happening?
Hmm.
And very commonly, those unmet needs are where they're trying to get to today.
Oh man, so I can imagine that you'd said connection was one of those needs that a lot of people need, and it really is vital, I believe, because connection is really the opposite of addiction, because isolation is the part of the root for some addiction cases, such as myself. So how do you get someone to build connection whenever they may not have means of connecting?
Mhm. Yeah, so this idea that we can't connect,
Mm-hmm.
this is a self-belief here.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds very similar to something along the lines of, I'm not good enough for connection.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy of connection. I'm not deserving of connection. And all of those, we could trace where those come from pretty easily. They almost always go back to childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the core belief. That again is that worldview, that perception that we developed very early in life.
Mm-hmm.
It might be very challenging and difficult to go out into the world and connect when the world is perceived as being so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That's a step that we get to later on.
Ah.
So what we do is when we look at the trauma, which
Mm-hmm.
is the bad thing that happened that shouldn't, or the good thing that should have happened that didn't,
Yeah.
it's not so much about the thing that happened. It's about what happens inside of us as a
Mm.
result of what happened there.
Yeah.
So when we go through pain as children and we can't navigate it, there's only a couple ways that we can adapt to it. Three
Okay.
of them to be more precise. You can
Ooh.
set boundaries with it. You
Okay.
can you can tell whoever's doing the thing that they need to stop, or you
Yeah.
can express your boundaries and you can say, I need to be treated these ways.
Mm-hmm.
But for infants and for children, we don't even know that that's a possibility.
Uh-uh.
And if we were to express boundaries with a abusive parent,
Mm-hmm.
it would make things much more dangerous.
Oh yeah.
So that's the first option, and that's out of the window. The
Mm-hmm.
second option is we can go away physically. And
Ooh.
a lot of us do that. I did
Uh-huh.
it when I was in my early teenage years.
Uh-huh.
But that goes against our survival intuition because we're dependent on the relationship to survive. It's
Mm.
very challenging to go set up shop and go have financial security
Uh-huh.
and to have the connections that you need because we're dependent on not just the stability, but the actual attachment.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just go away.
Huh.
So the third option kicks in, and this is the hallmark of trauma right here, is
Ooh. I
we go away mentally. Is that what you were
Oh,
thinking?
I was about to say, don't say it. Don't say the head word.
The head word?
Mentally.
Oh yes, yes. Exactly. Well, it's a wonderful survival mechanism
Huh.
because when we're going through pain that we don't have the resources or the ability to navigate, we can't
Mm-hmm.
process it. This survival mechanism kicks in and it's like a numbing agent and it takes us away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, we become disconnected. We
Ooh.
we learn that this pain that we're feeling is too dangerous, it's overwhelming, and we
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from it. We disconnect from our emotions, we disconnect from our feelings, from our boundaries, from our expression, and we
Mm-hmm.
go away from that mentally. One of the main ways that we do that
Mm-hmm.
is through distractions. So we
Ooh.
need some sort of thing to take us away from it.
Huh.
We find tasks,
Uh-huh.
we do things, we go into the TV, we go into the internet, we go into sports, we go into academics,
Mm-hmm.
we try and please other people, we take on our parents' emotions and we're going to care for them,
Yeah.
and that's how we get away from the pain.
Ooh.
And then when those distractions aren't strong enough anymore, you can see that that's already an addiction that has already begun.
Yep.
Then we go into more intense behaviors and eventually into substances and things like that that
Mm.
take us away. So the disconnect is the hallmark
Mm-hmm.
of trauma.
Mm.
When we look at the foundation that caused this disconnection, the
Mm-hmm.
thing that we really needed was connection. We needed
Yeah.
somebody to be with us, somebody to see us, somebody to understand us, somebody to accept us as we
Mm.
were, to validate and reaffirm and say, of course you're angry, your needs aren't being met. I, as
Mm.
your parent, am not rising up to what you need, and I'm going to try to be there for you. And then you get the
Mm.
comfort, and then you get the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So the question becomes, if we're trying to overcome that disconnect
Uh-huh.
and we want to establish connection, well, who's the person who has to give us that connection? Who's the person who has to
Ooh.
meet those needs?
Oh. Oh. It might go back to the parents, huh?
Well, you would think so, but we're adults now.
Oh. So wait. Let me guess. Does it have to come from within ourselves?
Precisely.
Oh, but that. Go
Mhm.
on. I need to hear what you're saying.
The way that we treat ourselves is a mirror for the external world. So if we don't have boundaries with ourselves, who is going to respect our boundaries?
Hmm.
If we don't value ourselves, who is going to value us?
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to be valued, if we want to be respected, if we want to be cherished, if we want to be good enough where somebody is going to make us important enough or
Mm-hmm.
valued enough to give us their presence and to make us a priority, we have to do that for ourselves first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
If our parents didn't do that for us
Mm.
and we never got it and we have all this pain, that's not within our control. There's nothing we can do about that. We're not
Yeah.
responsible for what happened to us,
Mm-hmm.
but we are responsible for what we do with that. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that we can do is we can learn to give ourselves the fundamental needs that we didn't get.
Oh, man. That is some really deep stuff. And so you're almost saying that, like, developing this belief from an early age, that belief of I'm not worthy or things like that, eventually turn into this self-fulfilling prophecy of why you may not be able to actually connect with other people, why you may find yourself isolated, and all you're wanting is to have people around, and no matter what you do, you just don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere with it. And is that kind of right? Like
Precisely.
it's something
Yeah,
that someone builds unknowingly, and
exactly.
now they don't know how to get out of it.
Precisely. So if
Oh.
our parents exiled us or
Mm-hmm.
punished us when we had emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and so we learned emotions were bad,
Yeah.
so we learned to stuff them down and exile them.
Mm-hmm.
As adults, when we're disconnecting from ourselves by stuffing our emotions down, we are treating ourselves the exact same way that our parents did that caused the pain to begin with. So we're stuck in a negative feedback loop where
Oh.
it's not our parents who are causing the pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it to ourselves because we learned that that is what connection, that is what attachments look like. We're
Yeah.
mistaking the patterns of pain and abuse and negligence for connections. So we
Hmm.
have to reinvent what it means to connect with ourselves.
Damn. So how does someone do that though? If all they've known is self-reliancy, if all they've known is to carry on my wayward son, then what do they do? Because obviously they can reach out to people now, like such as people yourself, life coaches, or a plethora of people, but they may not even feel like that's how they get started because no one else has wanted them in the first place either. So why should someone else? Right?
Yeah.
Or what about the people that even think that I've tried it with other people, but it doesn't work?
hmm The first thing that you mentioned right there was sounded a lot like I don't deserve it or I'm not
Yeah.
worthy of it.
Again, right? Yeah.
hmm Yeah. And then the second thing is, well, I've tried it and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have to. I think a lot of people get to the point where they say, I need to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
And that belief that I'm not worthy of it, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving of it is the big barrier.
Mm.
So what I want to try and do here is I want people to when that belief is present, when
Mm-hmm.
they're saying I don't deserve this or I'm unworthy or it's not going to work,
Yeah.
they're already closing themselves off.
Ooh.
So what I would ask is, where did you learn that from? Where did you learn to talk to yourself that way and treat yourself that way? And very commonly, the answer is going to go back to where this pain originated from, which is
Mm-hmm.
in childhood. So again, we're in that negative feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
We're treating ourselves the same way that whoever it was treated us that caused the pain to begin with.
Oh.
So if we want to be good enough, if we
Uh-huh.
want to have the self-value, the self-respect, the self-worth, the self-care,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we have to start to cultivate here. So
Huh.
if I were to see my childish self who was saying, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, what I
Mm-hmm.
would do is I would want to see him,
Mm-hmm.
I would want to be with him, and I would want to say, of course you feel that way because nobody's ever treated you that way. But I'll tell you what, that's not true. And I'm going to prove to you that it's not true because I'm going to be there for you and I'm going to show you that it's not true with my actions. And so this is my way of comforting that pain that I carry. And one way
Mm-hmm.
that I might do it is say, I'm going to work on every single day building some connection with myself. And of
Ooh.
course, figuring that out is very challenging on your own. It's like looking at the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle, the 10,000 piece puzzle from right here. You can't see the pieces.
Uh-huh.
So if that belief of I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, or even further, I
Uh-huh.
have to be strong and independent and do it
Ooh.
all on my own because I can't
Uh-huh.
rely on anybody else is
Uh-huh.
present. Again, let's look at where did this originate from and what
Yeah.
were the unmet needs.
Mm-hmm.
And if those things were there and you needed somebody to be with you, somebody to show you how to do the thing, somebody to go through it with you, well then
Mm-hmm.
you know exactly what you need to do.
Huh. Damn. Oh, and there's one thing you said real quick that you said before too, and that's someone's presence. And for some reason, I imagine just their being around you is a like physical present as well, right? Or am I reading into that too much?
No, no, that's a very good point, Keegan. So when I ask people what did they need when this pain first developed, they say things
Mm-hmm.
like love
Yeah.
or, whatever it is, connection,
Uh-huh.
protection.
Yeah.
In order to be loved, in order to be protected or to be connected, you first have to have somebody be there with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So presence is key.
Mm.
Now, physical proximity, just having a parent there, it's not
Mm.
enough.
Yeah.
What you have as the child has to be able to receive the connection or the compassion, the care, the love from the parent.
Mm.
We can take it for granted that all the parents are loving because they're biologically programmed to love their children. But whether or not the child can receive that is a totally different story.
Ooh.
So, what happens if the parents are very loving,
Mm-hmm.
well meaning, very caring,
Uh-huh.
and they're physically present, but they're stressed out with work? They're
Ooh.
stressed out with the finances of
Uh-huh.
life or the economy or their relationships. And so when they're physically present with their children,
Mm-hmm.
they're not emotionally present. They
Ooh.
can't see what the kid's going through. And the
Mm-hmm.
child says, the reason why they're so stressed, the
Mm-hmm.
reason why they're not able to be present with me is because it's my fault. Because as children, everything is about us. That's the only way that we know how to see things. The
Mm-hmm.
child doesn't know that it's work and it's the economy and it's all these things that are happening out there. And
Mm-hmm.
mom's a single parent and she's navigating other relations. It has nothing to do with that. It's
Yeah.
because of me.
Mm.
So just having the physical proximity is not
Mm-hmm.
enough. That can still be very traumatic if the parents are not finely attuned to the emotional needs of the child and the child can receive it. So these
Uh-huh.
are the things that we really want to cultivate is it's not just enough to see the pain. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great start. Fantastic way of beginning. But
Uh-huh.
we also want to learn how to connect with it and be attuned to that, to whatever the pain is that we're carrying around.
Ooh. Okay. So whenever someone actually starts to tune in to their pain, isn't that painful though?
Of course. Yeah, it's pain. And we have various defense mechanisms that want to take us away from it.
Huh. Okay.
I've never met, I've only met, I won't say I've never met, I've only met a handful of people
Uh-huh.
who had parents that were attuned enough to them as children
Mm-hmm.
that showed them how to recognize and identify pain or emotions and showed
Ooh.
them how to express them and comfort and soothe and process those emotions. For the most part, none of us got that. So
Yeah.
again, that defense mechanism, that survival mechanism kicks in that says,
Uh-huh.
when there's this big pain and I don't know what to do with it, I disconnect. And then my phone comes, oh, and I'm scrolling for the next hour.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yes, tapping into it can be very painful. It can be
Mm-hmm.
very overwhelming because we don't know what to do with it. And
Mm-hmm.
all of our defense mechanisms are going to kick in and say, this is dangerous. This is threatening. Just like
Mm-hmm.
expressing emotions or just like setting boundaries, it's threatening at first.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll think something's wrong with this. So, this is just again why you don't have to do it alone. In fact, it is. I'm somebody who tried to go through it alone for about a decade. And
Mm-hmm.
the amount of progress I made in like 2 years of
Mm-hmm.
working with teachers, even remotely and even just intermittently, because I didn't have the resources. And I convinced myself, oh, I can't do that. I can't afford it. They don't want to talk to me anyway. The
Uh-huh.
amount of time that I spent working with them, so
Mm-hmm.
small, I got so much further, so much faster, just because they helped me to identify these patterns when I couldn't see them.
Hmm. Damn. Okay. So one of the things that we do as children is develop those habits and everything, right? That in a sense, it sounds like that's early self-medication. And that is essentially a very bad road to go down. And that's kind of the road I fell down myself. And it does not sound fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Self medication
mm-hmm.
or self regulation, perhaps.
Ooh. Okay.
See, children
Mm-hmm.
are born with the ability to express emotions.
Mm-hmm.
A 2 day old baby is absolutely going to let you know when they're scared, when they're sad, when they're angry, when they're hungry, whatever. They don't
Yeah.
care if you've got to work. They don't care if you're busy. You're going to hear it.
Uh-huh.
But they don't have the ability to soothe that emotion or to
Mm.
regulate those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they learn it is through the attachment with the caregivers.
Ooh.
So they're
Gotcha.
So in neuroscience, what this is referred to as interpersonal, so between two people or more,
Mm-hmm.
neurobiology. And what this means is it's a fancy term that says the unregulated, immature, undeveloped nervous system, emotional circuits of the baby child,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to download information from the mature, regulated nervous system.
Huh.
And they do so through touch.
Whoa.
But what happens if one, the mature regulated nervous system is not so
Mm-hmm.
mature and not so
Ooh.
regulated, and they didn't get this care and connection from their parents? Or
Uh-huh.
two, what if they're really well meaning and
Mm-hmm.
really caring and they're getting expert advice
Mm-hmm.
on parenting from doctors or parenting experts that say when your baby cries, don't hold them. Let them learn how to
Mm.
self-soothe. Let them learn how to self-regulate. They need to learn how to be independent.
Hmm.
They don't have the ability to do that. So we learn to medicate or regulate in whatever means are available to us. The
Huh.
only mean that is available is to disconnect from that pain.
Man, so we learn a very fast way of how to disconnect. And it sounds like it is a load of work to reconnect. And it's something that is it's something that's much more easily done with the help of others, as you were talking about, but you have to also reach down inside first, right? So after you do that, what do you usually do with someone that is starting pretty well and then they're just go sideways all of a sudden real fast? Would that be one of their survival instincts again? Just because the fear is taking over? Like, what happens to them if they don't have that pain anymore, right?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying here. So there's a part of us
Mm
that adapted to that pain
hmm.
by
Mm
disconnecting and by distracting or by people pleasing, whatever it is.
hmm. Uh huh.
And so, what happens if we can learn to process that pain? What happens to that part of us that exists?
Mm
Is that
hmm.
what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, the idea that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Do we turn around and cut the head off of the snake?
Oh, yeah, no.
Right. Yeah. Why would we want to do that?
Yeah.
Because this is a part of us.
Uh
And
huh.
so, to build the ability to navigate these emotions, you would think at first would make that part of us irrelevant,
Mm hmm.
obsolete, not needed.
Yeah.
But that's actually very far from the truth. These
Okay.
parts of us never go away. We can never get rid of them. Not saying that that's what we want to do,
Yeah.
but it's not something that we can do. These are
Mm.
parts of us that are going to be with us for the rest of our lives.
Mhm.
And so the more that we build a relationship and a connection with them, and we start to really identify them and
Mhm.
recognize when they're present or recognize the situations where they would become present, the
Mhm.
less that they need to step up and take the wheel of the steering wheel, so to speak.
Hmm. Okay. Huh. So it's kind of going along with a saying of like befriend your demons of sorts, right? Like you don't necessarily want them leading the charge, but it's not a bad idea if they're on your side, right?
Mhm. Yeah, this word demon,
Mhm.
this word demon is a very interesting word
Mhm.
because the etymology of the word demon
Guiding
comes,
spirit.
yeah, it comes from the function of life,
Uh-huh.
the guiding spirit, the function of life. And we have turned it into the devil, the
Mhm.
demonic, this thing that we want to get rid of or that we want to fight and exile or have a war with.
Mhm.
It's almost like our culture, our modern society today is absolutely against life.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you look out at every direction that common culture is going in, that's very evident.
Oh yeah.
So, yes, we absolutely want to get back in tune with all of these aspects of who we are and the life that we live. And we
Mhm.
want to be very, very clear about when we identify a part of us as demonic, as
Mm.
something that is evil or a devil that we want to get rid of.
Mhm.
When we can really start to connect with that part of ourselves and pull up a chair and have tea with this part of ourselves, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
The more that we start to see that it's not some big, scary, overwhelming monster, it's that childish version of ourselves who's crying out and screaming in the only ways that they know how to scream.
Mm.
They're expressing their needs in the only ways that are available to them. And we're usually looking at them from the same way that we were treated when we expressed our needs that way. We're
Mm.
bad, we get exiled, we get punished, so on and so forth.
Mm.
So we really want to start to build a relationship with these demons, so to speak, and connect with them and start to see them as trusted friends who have been with us since the beginning. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that we have to listen to them completely and that we need to take all of their advice, but
Mm-hmm.
rather we're going to look at what they really want and what they really need here, and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how we can meet those needs in more constructive ways.
Oh man. I love that because not a lot of people know that demon is guiding spirit, and that I'm so glad that you got that because I was going to be like, no, but you got it. So, uh, and you're right. Like society nowadays is almost against everything life because if something is edifying, about 10 other people are going to find a way to cancel it and say, no, don't do that because X, Y, or Z, you know?
Yeah.
And it's for stupid reasons one way or another, and I'm not about to try to go into that. We don't have time to go into how it's a whole lot of, well, maybe we do, I don't know. um but it's difficult, isn't it, whenever everyone else is on that same self-destructive journey and you're just kind of like, well, everyone else is going this way, so this is the right way, right? Like, so how, whenever you find people looking out above that sea of masses, all headed towards the cliff, like guinea pigs or whatever it is, lemurs, is that it? Um, how do you grapple those people? How do you reach out to them whenever you can tell that they're right there on the brink of an epiphany?
Hmm. Yeah, there's this line from a NoFX song. He says, "The sad truth is you'd rather follow the school into the net because swimming alone at sea is not the type of freedom that you actually want."
Mm,
And yeah, that's so common as we just get caught up in this. And I mean, you'll see these people protesting for climate change,
mm,
and environmental preservation, and they're actively destroying the environment and doing so many things that are completely against that. There's so many forces out there that are pushing us towards destruction.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, this has been there all throughout history, as far
Yeah.
back as we can trace. You can go back to, biblical times with Moloch. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is this OG demon who feeds on people's despair, and he demands the sacrifice of small children, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes the parents kill them so that way he can feed on the despair.
Mm-hmm.
This has been through all the ages of history. There's been forces that are pushing us this way,
No.
and so how do we reach people when
Yeah.
they're on the verge of waking up to that
Yeah.
pattern, so to speak?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a really challenging one. That has been the question of my lifetime right there. And that was one of the original questions that I was asking, is how in the world can I help people wake up?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you try to wake somebody up, you're going to piss them off and you're going to incur the wrath. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you ever wake somebody up when they're not ready to be woken up, I mean, just literally speaking, the majority of the times it doesn't go over very well.
No. Uh-uh.
And a lot of people are so, I mean, you look at the Matrix. When
Mm-hmm.
Morpheus is explaining the Matrix to Neo, and he says, "You have
Mm-hmm.
to understand, Neo, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. The
Mm-hmm.
majority of them are so dependent on the system that they will actually fight to defend it."
Yeah.
So when you start to show people that they're actually in these unconscious patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and they're fulfilling the ends of a system that is actually against their well-being, when
Hmm.
you show them that, it doesn't go very well. I've never once been able to successfully show somebody, this little bug keeps flying right back over here, it's pretty funny. um, I've never once successfully been able to wake somebody up through those means.
Huh.
But what I can say is that the way that I have been able to get through to people
Mm-hmm.
is by doing the work myself
Oh.
and by living and cultivating a livelihood of constantly trying to liberate myself from those same patterns and being
Mm-hmm.
that one fish that's not afraid to swim into the net, or
Mm.
that is not going to swim in the net and that is not afraid to swim at sea.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll go out there and do my own thing. And even if that means walking my own path, and even if that means that the masses are going to try to crucify me for it,
Mm-hmm.
which has absolutely happened to me multiple times in my
Mm.
life. I still have to be willing to walk that path. And
Yeah.
then the people who are right on the edge and they're really actively looking for it, kind of like Neo was constantly on the internet looking for that,
Uh-huh.
those are the people who usually end up finding me
Huh. Whoa.
when they're ready to
Yeah.
wake up, and when they've realized that they're asleep or that they're in these patterns and they
Mm-hmm.
want to do something differently, then they have to make the choice to come and
Oh.
to step out of it. Every
Okay.
single person, just like Neo said constantly,
Uh-huh.
I didn't save you, you saved yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person has the ability to heal themselves, to wake themselves up, to take accountability and responsibility.
Uh-huh.
And all the wisdom is inside of them.
Hmm.
And all that I do is help them find that inside themselves. But they have to be willing and have the strong conviction to
Mm-hmm.
go into that discomfort and do it themselves.
Oh man. So if I'm hearing this right, and I may be twisting it to make it sound better, but essentially self-limiting beliefs and these self-destructive behaviors and these negative feedback loops all essentially are the matrix that we trap ourselves in and don't really want to wake out of, right? Wake up from.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, that's right.
That would make a lot of sense why some people would not want to wake up because familiarity is comfort, right?
Yeah.
And comfort is essentially an illusion of survival, I would say.
It's comfort is an attempt to avoid discomfort or to
Mm-hmm.
avoid pain.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are so many aspects in our current society that prey upon that,
Mm-hmm.
that want to sell you the temporary, the short-term relief, and will enslave you or cause tremendous harm and suffering all
Mm-hmm.
throughout your life.
Yeah.
Our phones are designed to be as addictive as possible, to provide short-term relief and
Mm-hmm.
long-term suffering. There's entire, multi-trillion dollar sectors of the economy that prey upon your belief of not being good enough. So that way they
Mm-hmm.
can sell you a product that will make you good enough.
Hmm.
There's so many systems out there that are keeping us intentionally in that state.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be willing, we have to cultivate the conviction and the desire to be willing to go into that discomfort.
Mm.
And so it's not about getting rid of the pain. It's not about taking it away. It's not about getting rid of all of the things that are bad in this world.
Uh-huh.
It's more about learning how to navigate those difficult times in
Mm.
ways that are authentic to what we really feel and express.
Yeah. And that can be really difficult though whenever people don't realize that taking that mask off is painful itself because your skin kind of grows around a mask, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right, isn't it? Yeah, there's an old saying that says healing can be painful.
Mm.
Change can be very difficult and painful. And trying to resist change and stay exactly the same, to stay in that same pattern,
Mm.
is even more painful and even more difficult.
Mm.
So, what we're balancing here is, do we want the short-term relief
Uh-huh.
and the long-term suffering,
Mm-hmm.
or do we want the short-term pain and the long-term benefit? Because
Oh.
when you start healing,
Mm-hmm.
so you start learning where we suppress ourselves, for instance, and
Uh-huh.
we learn, okay, I've been suppressing my emotions my whole life, and we start expressing our emotions. People aren't going to like that,
Yeah, yeah.
especially the people who have benefited from our suppression of emotions.
Mm. Yeah.
When we start expressing boundaries
Uh-huh.
and we start saying, I'm not going to be treated that way anymore, I have standards for how I'll be treated,
Mm-hmm.
and I expect that everybody in my life treats me this way.
Yeah.
The people in our lives who don't like treating us that way, who benefit from our lack of boundaries, they're not
Uh-huh.
going to like that.
No, they're not.
And so this healing process of starting to be more authentic and
Mm-hmm.
to be in tune with who we truly are is
Mm-hmm.
going to cause short-term pain and suffering. And we
Mm.
have to be willing and we have to build the capacity to navigate that discomfort. But this leads to a long-term benefit.
Oh man. That is ugh. The way that you put that though has I don't know if I've actually heard it put that way before, and if I have, it finally stuck. But that short
I'm
term,
happy to hear.
yeah, short term pain for long term comfort and stuff. Like, dude, that is the perfect way to essentially swallow the toad or rip the band-aid off. Any of those analogies would kind of fit right there because it is one of those it you really like I really do have to sit there and say this is going to be what some of the consequences are if I want to do this. Am I willing to do it? And then if I don't do it, these are the consequences. Which one are worse? Like, and sometimes I think that progression is definitely the way forward because otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And I'm so glad that you are where you're at now because you're helping out so many other people. And dude, this is just freaking cool. Like,
Yeah, likewise. I mean, you're putting out this information for people. You're having these conversations. This is really important. And we're in the space where we can do this, where we can
mm,
talk about these things and share this information for other people because we've gone through it.
yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
the Buddha says, it's because you suffer and it's because I suffer that we can understand one another. It's a
mm,
shared language. And us doing this really sets a framework for other people to follow. And the wonderful thing is we're not the first ones to do it too. People have been doing this for thousands of years.
yep,
It's a wonderful path that we can walk.
yeah,
It's about answering the call of life, which is what
mm,
Joseph Campbell refers to as the hero's journey,
hmm,
to actively engage and participate in life.
uh-huh,
And that's the first thing is being willing to go into the discomfort. If you want to go to the gym and you want to exercise and you want to
hmm,
get in good shape,
yeah,
it's going to be uncomfortable.
yep,
If you want to clean up your diet and you want to get rid of all the junk food,
hmm,
it's going to be uncomfortable.
yeah.
If you want to stop drinking, depending on what your drinking habits are, if you don't do it right, it can kill you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Been there, done that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very difficult to go through that, and
Hmm.
that short-term discomfort is going to lead to long-term benefits. It's the
Hmm.
exact opposite of the addiction, where the addiction provides the short-term relief and the long-term harm. We're just
Oh
going to flip
gosh.
that pattern around.
Yeah. Oh man. And I think that is something that I would have really would have benefited from hearing early on in recovery is that just if you do it now, it's going to be so much better later on. And one of the things that we were taught in the rehab I went to was keep your pain in your pocket. And there's nothing really wrong with it, but some people looked at it the wrong way. I always thought of it as if I'm thinking about going on a relapse spree or anything like that to pull the pain out, be like, yeah, that sucked. I don't want to do that again. Put that back. Never mind. You know.
Yeah.
But do you think that some people uh, fantasize about the past pain?
There's a line from a song, a really popular song. I actually listened to it for the first time like a month ago. I
Hmm.
had heard it because it's so popular, but I never listened to it.
Oh.
And he says in the song, you can get addicted to a certain kind of sadness.
Yep.
And we can really identify with that pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of this.
Okay.
I knew somebody, she was in her mid 20s and she had terminal cancer, stage 4,
Mm.
all throughout her body. And she was going through massive treatment and she ended up dying from it as well. Um, she told me that when she was a kid, when she was a child,
Mm-hmm.
that her parents were fighting and there was all this turmoil and her needs were going unmet.
Yeah.
So she used to lay in her bed at night and she
Mm-hmm.
would listen to all this fighting and she would imagine and wish that she would get cancer in her heart. So that way her parents would have to stop fighting and they would pay attention to her.
Oh no.
See, if something happens in our childhood where
Mm-hmm.
maybe we get really sick and then
Mm-hmm.
we get the care that we or the attention that we weren't getting otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to get hooked and to get addicted to that pain.
Yeah.
And for so many of us, we spend so much of our energy suppressing our emotions
Uh-huh.
that this pain is really all that we can feel.
Yeah.
And so if we get rid of that, what happens then? Are
Mm-hmm.
we going to be completely numb? Or is there going to be nothing left? What happens to me if I can't feel anything other than the pain?
Mm-hmm.
I used to have these, for myself, I used to have these terrible fears that if I didn't feel that pain, if I didn't go through that suffering,
Mm-hmm.
if things weren't intense for me, that was going to be the end of my life.
Oh.
And so I would hold on to and cling on to this pain and suffering because that was who I was. That was
Mm-hmm.
my identity. I knew
Yeah.
nothing else outside of it. And again, that's like the cut the head off of the snake. If I lose that, then I don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's so many ways that we can get hooked on that pain and
Mm-hmm.
we identify with it. And it becomes like this version of ourselves that is who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
There's, it's interesting. Like when we suppress one emotion,
Mm-hmm.
we suppress all of them.
Mm.
And it's not like it's not going to a buffet
Uh-huh.
where you say, I'll take the joy, I'll have some of the gratitude, keep the fear, keep the anger, definitely keep the pain. I don't want to, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
We suppress all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like holding a beach ball underwater, is we use
Ew.
all of our energy
Uh-huh.
to push this thing down. And no matter how hard we try, bam, it comes bursting up the seams. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the pain that we're feeling right there. So it's so easy to get hooked on that one and just to identify with that one emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can learn to comfort that pain, if we can learn to soothe it, if we can learn to soothe the panic
Mm-hmm.
and the sadness and the fear and all the shame, then we can start to make room for the joy and the play and the gratitude to start to come up a little bit more. They're
Mm.
always here, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if only one of them is consuming all of our attention and all of our experience, we can't see anything else.
Oh
So we
man.
have to comfort and soothe that pain and the panic, the anxiety, the depression, all the things that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that way we can make room for all the other pieces that we really want to experience to grow and bloom some more.
Oh man. So it's almost like making room in your garden, like going and tilling up the field and just choosing out some weeds to pull and so on and so forth, huh?
Precisely. And that's the exact analogy that a lot of Buddhist philosophy uses is
Oh.
it's like gardening. You got these giant trees or giant weeds that have grown, and they might not be the plants that we want.
Uh-huh.
So we have to little by little prune them back down and use all of our energy to recess these plants and bring them back down to their roots and then down to their seed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can choose what we want to grow over here.
Hmm. Man, I love that. And I didn't know that Buddhists use gardening analogies a lot because I do, but it would make sense because me and a friend were looking into that whenever we were in middle school, high school. So maybe I learned it and I just forgot all about it. Who knows? But Julian, real quick, this has been an amazing conversation. I know I've got some tears out. I feel like I've learned a whole lot. I know my audience has learned a whole lot because if I learn something, they learn something. Someone's wounds are similar enough to mine, yours, and the person next to them that someone's going to be feeling something after this. And if they don't, well, I think they've got some integration to do, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I hope that some messages get through. Yeah,
Sweet. Well, Julian, I have to ask you something real quick. Do you think that we could see you on in the future? Because I don't think that we've really dived far enough into pain and how we actually get out of it, how we don't cut the head off the snake, how we actually find out the snake is actually our friend and we can take it home or something like that. So, do you think we can see you on in the future?
absolutely. I'd love to come
Sweet.
back and have some more conversation with you.
Well, I'm super excited for that, and I can't thank you enough. But real quick, where can people find you? Psychedelicintegration.net?
Yeah, with a hyphen in between psychedelic and integration.
Okay.
And our Instagram is a good spot too. Websites, first and foremost, there's a mailing list. You can subscribe and we'll keep you updated on things. We post articles. And if you want some support, you don't have to go through this stuff alone. And this is what I do is I help people out here. So if you want to reach out, there's free consultations on there. And don't let something as silly as finances stop you from reaching out and seeking the help that you need. And then the Instagram's a good spot as well. We're starting to post things on there, clips from these shows. And if you want me to talk about a specific thing, you can always reach out and let me know.
Dude, Julian, that is way too awesome. Everyone out there, be sure to check him out on Facebook, Instagram, and just type in psychedelic dash integration and .net. You'll find his website for sure. And I mean, check him out because this has been awesome. I know I'm going to have to do my own follow ups in the future. So, Julian, be ready for me. um, but I have one more question. And this one is not the game show part. So we're just going to leave that one for this very, very end. But the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity. And we explore how all facets of living life impact our mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today? And what's one practice or perspective that you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
Being authentic. Meaning, and I'm not talking about like some woo-woo concept of something that's just way out there that doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about reconnecting with who you are and
Mm-hmm.
expressing that and being true to who you truly are, expressing emotions, expressing boundaries, reconnecting with yourself, others, the world around you, and cultivating a livelihood so that what we do represents who we truly are. I think that authenticity is really the antidote and the key that's going to open up a lot of doors for change in this world.
Oh man, Julian, that is way too cool. And I believe that that is one of the greatest keys that anyone can get. It's kind of like a master key to all doors, right?
Yeah.
Uh, um, but if you are ready, we can do our little game show if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what we got.
Alrighty. So, dun, 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 dun. Julian, it's time for a lightning round of a little segment we call Re-Entry Reflections. You've helped people navigate all kinds of psychedelic experiences and rather painful integrations, if I might say so myself. Um, Now we're putting your integration instincts to the test. Actually, ooh, you know what? We're not going to do this because my questions were written for an entirely different conversation because we went down a rabbit hole train I didn't know existed. So, but that's not a problem at all because you're going to be back on the show. And I just realized, like, I mean, we can do this, but this is more about psychedelics.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. We can do it next time if you want, or whatever you want to do, Keegan. I'll follow you on that one.
All right, we're going to do lightning round prompts. We're just going to, I'm just going to shoot out 5 of them and we'll see how fast we can do them, okay?
All right.
All right. Number 1. I felt infinite. Now I feel overwhelmed. What grounds that insight?
Connecting with the thing that's overtaking you. To be overwhelmed is like a wave that overtakes you and you don't know how to navigate it. What is it that's overwhelming you? And I can guarantee you, most likely, it's some emotion or some belief. And so, if we can connect with that, if we can get curious about it, we can listen to it, we can see why it's here, what the teaching is, we can build a relationship with it. Its power to overwhelm us greatly reduces, and we can comfort and soothe that feeling or emotion or whatever it was that's here now. It's here for a reason. We just need to build the foundation, the capacity to engage with it.
No, man, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay. Number 2. I saw my true self. Now I'm scared to be seen. What do I do?
Yeah, we look at those beliefs again. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not deserving.
Yeah.
All of these adaptations that we have, at some point in our lives, did we survive? Did we adapt by making ourselves small and by making ourselves agreeable and not being seen? I certainly did. And, stepping out and putting myself, sure you can relate, and doing things like this was very frightening, very threatening in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we really want to get familiar with those beliefs about ourselves and see why we're so afraid to be seen. What's the teaching here again? What's the reason why this is here? Where does this come from in our lives? And what can we do about it? What can we do with it?
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Number 3, I want to quit my job immediately. Should I?
I never tell people what to do or what they shouldn't do. But I can tell you, I have seen a lot of people
Mm,
who absolutely despised the livelihood that they had and
mm,
wanted to quit. And I'm not saying you should do it immediately, but if you strongly are opposed to what you're doing for work, if it's sucking you dry, if putting on that mask and playing that role and getting in that box is requiring you to sacrifice yourself, to stuff your boundaries down, to stuff your expression down, to make yourself agreeable in order to maintain that job, then this is something to reflect on. And it might not be wise
mm-hmm,
to immediately quit your job and to just uproot, especially
mm-hmm,
in today's markets,
mm-hmm,
but you can take steps daily to liberate yourself from that pattern. And the goal, of course, is to create a livelihood that both nourishes and supports you and others. So these are things I think are very important. And we want to be very careful of the steps that we take. We don't need to jump right off the cliff. We can look first. We can walk out into the water nice and easy. We can get comfortable with the water. We can make sure we can swim, and then we
uh-huh.
can take off.
Ooh, I love that one too. Thank you. Number 4, I saw my parents paying. Do I reach out to them?
That's up to you. You
Mm,
know, when our parents caused us to suffer
mm-hmm,
as children, whether we went through abuse or, like I said, maybe we just had really well-meaning parents
mm-hmm,
that got really bad advice. And so they sacrificed and stuffed down all
mm-hmm,
of their parental intuition that told
mm-hmm,
them to hold my baby when they were crying and so on and so forth.
mm-hmm,
They learned these patterns from somewhere.
mm,
They learn not to trust themselves, or they learn to hurt others the way that they were hurt from somewhere.
mm,
The place that they most likely learned it from was probably from their parents. We're talking
mm,
about intergenerational trauma here, pain that is handed through the generations, and it flows through each and every one of us.
mm-hmm,
So if you want to reach out to your parents, if you're estranged from them or disconnected from them, make sure you're doing it for yourself, not to make somebody else happy, not to take their pain away from them. You're not responsible for other people's experiences or emotions. You're only responsible for yourself.
mm,
So that pain that your parents have, if you saw it, guess what? It's inside of you too. And that's where you can really work with it at, is what's inside of you. And then if the situation presents itself, I
mm-hmm,
highly recommend always trying to stay open,
mm-hmm,
because people can change. People do
mm-hmm,
change. And if those patterns and dynamics that cause the pain or the rupture to begin with don't change,
mm-hmm.
boundaries. You have to take care of yourself first and foremost. So
Gotcha.
don't make any decisions based off of making other people happy or taking care of other people's needs above your own.
Mm, that's deep too. Thank you again. And uh, let's do number 5. Last one. This one's a little bit off topic, but still on point. The trip has ended, but I'm still crying 3 days later. What do I do?
Yeah, again, it sounds like there's big emotions that are present
Mm,
and they need attention. So if you worked with me,
uh-huh.
we've spent weeks long before this building
Mm-hmm.
the capacity and a practice to engage with these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't just come bursting out the seams. We've already taken the inventory. We already
Mm,
know what's in there, and we've built a practice of intentionally turning into those emotions and going in and relating and comforting these emotions.
uh-huh.
So if you're at that point right now where you've already done it and these big emotions are coming up, try to notice what you do with those emotions. What is your relationship with them? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Are they overwhelming? Are they scary? Do you try to exile them? Do you fight? Do you struggle with them? Do you try to
Mm-hmm.
distract to get away from them?
Mm-hmm.
They're here for a reason. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can turn into it and face it, get curious about it and try and figure out why it's here,
Mm-hmm.
what the teaching is, what the wisdom is, what the unmet needs are, then you can try to figure out how to meet those needs in your own healthy, constructive ways. So rather than avoiding it, rather than disconnecting from it, let's
Mm-hmm.
try to face it. Let's try to relate with it. Let's get curious about it.
Oh, thank you for that, Julian. And I believe that that does it for today. Yeah, that does it for today's questions. But I do have to say thank you very much for playing Re-Entry Reflections on Retrieving Sanity today. And you have earned yourself the title of, I wrote it down over here earlier, um, the Cartographer of Consciousness. You
That's
don't
a good one.
you don't just inquire, you also map the terrain of inner truths in the world map of my mind. Not my mind, but everyone's mind, right?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you very much, Julian, for being on Retrieving Sanity. Everyone go and check out psychedelic-integration.net and be sure to check his stuff out. Reach out to him if y'all need any help. And also go to retrievingsanity.com to find his website. If you can't remember his website from this episode, you can also find it in the episode description of this episode at YouTube and also Podbean, Spotify, wherever else you can find your podcast. And thank you for listening on WDJY 99.1 FM. As always, much love. See you later. Oh, and don't forget to love yourself and the person next to you if you can, but love yourself. Much love. Shalom. And stop. Cool.